name is Fernanda Cataloghi. I am the General Manager of the Brazilian American Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the Chamber, I just want to welcome you all for joining us today. I'd also like to thank Leticia, Thomas, and Maria for sharing their expertise with us today. And that's all. Without further ado, just let me invite Leticia to moderate and start the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for being here today. Let me just make sure that this works and this works. We have a lot to... I'm going to actually stand up because I feel a little bit more dynamic standing up. We are going to jump right in because there is so much to unpack today. There is a lot of information. So basically the format of the event, we're going to do a presentation about college applications, and then we're going to have two students, Thomas and Maria, share their experiences with us, and then we're going to have some time for Q&A. So I hope you have a lot of questions. Okay, so what exactly is a college advisor? I like to say that a college advisor is a matchmaker between students and universities. Another way of defining a college advisor is a coach that guides students through the process of college applications. Basically, there are between 4,000 and 5,000 universities in the country, and each student will apply to 10, 12, 15, maybe 20. So how do you choose? And that's what I call myself, a matchmaker between students and colleges. And unlike a romantic matchmaking that is one-to-one, in college advising it's more like 1 to 20. I mean, there's never just one university that is the right fit, but a few good universities. Okay, another term is for a college advisor is independent educational consultant. And how do I actually match the students to universities? Well, first I help students with undergraduate programs, so high school students that are applying to a Bachelor of Arts, a Bachelor of Science, a Bachelor of Business Administration, a BBA, which is a new popular degree, a Bachelor of Fine Arts. And I also help students who are applying to graduate school, like their MBAs, masters, and doctoral program. And why is it important to use a college advisor? Well, in the US, especially when you talk about public high school, they are jammed with students. Like, here we have a little bit of the stats. An average school counselor in a public school will spend about 38 minutes with each student during the course of 4 years. That is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the time that is necessary to put together an application. Okay, so for example, in Arizona, 924 students per school counselor. In New York State, 635 students per counselor, and so on. And then you're going to say, but Leticia, wait a second, I have a great idea. My kid goes to private school. So private school has another set of issues. And those issues are, we are dealing with connections, legacy, and donations. Okay, so the private school, they manipulate the family and the student a little bit stronger, following those connections, legacy, and donations. And there is a phenomenon in private school that happens, which is called fanning out. Basically, the school counselors, they know their students, and they following that, the legacy, the connections, and basically they go, okay, you go to Harvard, you go to Yale, you go to Brown, and if you're not at the top of the top, you kind of like get lost in the shuffle. So the truth is there are pros and cons in attending public school and private school. Okay? So here I am. I am Leticia Schwartz. Very nice to meet you. Thank you so much for coming today. I have a master's in communication from Fairfield University. I have a bachelor's degree in economics from Universidade Cândido Mendes in Rio, Brazil. I have a college advising certificate from UCLA. I have a culinary and pastry arts from the French Culinary Institute, and that is my previous career. And we're going to talk about that because my background actually is perfect. It serves me really well as a college advisor, and I will tell you how. And I also have a journalism degree from the French Culinary Institute, and as a college advisor, I am a member of NACAC, HECA, and IECA, which are the most important organizations in the industry. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about my background in publishing. I wrote 3 cookbooks, The Brazilian Kitchen, My Rio de Janeiro, and Latin Superfoods, and I am really proud of all of them. And how actually does it work? I also wrote hundreds of articles about food and culture, especially Brazilian culture, to food magazines. And I'll never forget, in my journalism class, one of the most important classes that I ever took, where I wrote, the exercise that we did was something like this. Well, let's practice an article on how to boil water for saveur, for fine cooking, and for Bon Appetit. I'm sure you are familiar with those magazines, right? I wrote for all of them. And I'll never forget, that exercise really created a mindset that now I use with my students. So for example, how to boil water for saveur. Saveur is a cultural focused magazine. So we would talk about how a grandma in Italy boils water and how that pasta water has full of starch. And we use the starch to make the sauce, right? And in Brazil, we cook yuca in the water. And in Mexico, the grandma is going to cook corn. And what they do with the water after corn, yuca, and pasta is cooked. So again, it's a cultural focus. Then for fine cooking, it's very technical. So for example, it's about how to boil water. Well, should I boil my water? Should I start with the pot covered or uncovered? Should I put salt before the water comes to a full boil or after it comes to a full boil? And is it better to cook the pot of water in an electric stove or a gas range? So again, very focused on the technical parts. And then Bon Appetit, of course, is a very entertaining magazine. It's all about the friends and the party. And Chef Marco in Búzios did a beautiful party. And his wife, Georgina, is a very sexy interior designer, and there's barely any talking about how to boil water. It's all about the friends, right? And that's exactly what I do with my students. I take your story and I tweak it to each university and each program. Because they're all different. Even though it's all universities, we need to tweak the story. Okay, so let's dive into the essentials of college application. Okay, what I usually tell is that it is not the student that is accepted. It's his application. And what I mean by that is the following. You can have a great student, straight A's, amazing grades all over. If he doesn't prepare a stellar application, robust, competitive, he will not have the chances compared to, for example, let's say you have another student who is smart, intelligent. He has a couple of A's, a couple of B's, maybe one C even, but he prepared a stellar application full of activities, full of community services. He created his own business, something like that. So he is going to have a much better chance of being admitted than the other one who just have good grades. Okay, so let's talk about the elements of the application, because that is also super important. You are always within the context. So for example, if you live in the state of New York, you are going to be compared to people from your school. Those are your competition. They always analyze your application within the context. They're not going to compare students who are coming from Brazil with Brazilians who study here, okay? And that means that if your school offers a lot of resources, you are expected to take advantage of those resources. Remember one saying, to whom much is given, much is expected. That means if you are in a high school that offers 30, 35 AP classes, you better take some AP classes, okay? Because if you don't take those AP classes, it's going to show that maybe you're not, challenging yourself enough. And that's what they want to see, okay? And that is part of the academic compound. And what is the academic compound? Is all of the elements that show the abilities, the academic abilities of the student. For example, the transcript, the GPA, the grades, and the quality of the courses. Again, going back to the AP classes. There are honors classes, there are regular classes, and there are AP classes. So they want to see that you challenge yourself. Then we have another very important part of the academic compound, the standardized exams, the SAT or the ACT. Decades ago, it started. And then during the COVID, it all went test optional. And now a couple of universities are bringing that as a requirement, okay? And that's a big debate, okay? Because they know that only the resource students will have the money to actually, pay tutors. It's very expensive. But on the other hand, it's a way to really capture the intellectual ability of the student with an SAT. Then we have recommendation letters from the school counselors and from the teachers. Usually they ask for 1 recommendation letter from a school counselor and 2 recommendation letters to teachers. Okay, and then we have on the other side the extracurricular part. So additional letters. Let's say your student worked at whatever, Kumon. And then the manager of the Kumon is willing to write you a recommendation letter. Let's take that. Let's use it. But let's not give that rec letter to the school counselor, because usually a school counselor has like a template of a letter. And he will take just 1 or 2 phrases from the rec letter from the Kumon manager and add it to his template. So in some cases, I really like to work with the student. If we have an additional rec letter, we are going to use it. And we're going to contact school by school asking how to submit that additional subletter. Then we also have the activity list. Hello, welcome. The activity list is another very important part of the application. Usually you have 10 spaces for those activities. Basically, what they want to see is what are students doing when they're not in school. Do you go to volleyball? Do you play music? Do you play piano? Do you play tennis? Oh, you do community service. Oh, do you do babysitting on the side? Well, we want to know that. Oh, you walk your dogs? Wait a second, you think it's not important, but it is. We want to know about that too. So it makes all up to 10 activities. And they want to be interconnected and balanced so that we create a story for the application. Okay, and then we get to the personal essay and the supplemental essays. Those are my favorite part as a storyteller, as a writer. And the personal essay is really a chance that you have to really, tell your own story. It doesn't have to be one exactly theme, or it can be about anything, but it should be a reflection of your soul, of your background. Okay, then the school specifics, the supplemental essays, usually they want to know, why do you want to come to that school? Why you want to apply to that particular major? And tell me more. Tell me, like, what have you done in your community to demonstrate that you can do the same in our campus? So it's really, you see how it takes a lot of time to cook this application. I use metaphors about cooking into everything because it does take a long time. And then possible interviews. Nowadays, because the volume of applications is so big, some schools are receiving 40,000 applications. UCLA is receiving 147,000 applications. Who can read that? Right? It's basically less and less schools are doing interviews. But I also like to guide when an interview happens. We do mock interviews, and I prepare my students for these interviews because they're really important. So, what are the universities looking for in the students? They want to see your personality. They want to see your motivation, your experiences, your alignment, your accomplishments. They want to know what kind of impact will that student have on our campus. They want to know if that students, what do they want to get from the university? Okay? And what does the student care about? Again, what are your passions? What are your interests? Many students, I cannot tell you how many times I will talk to a teenager and they will say, so, what do you like to do? I don't know. Okay, with me, that does not happen. We are going to make, we're going to create some dynamic here and make some stories happen. Okay, because this is very, very common. They don't know because they don't know they don't know what's important. They don't know how to create the concept of a narrative, of a story that matters. Okay, so speaking of the profile of the student, let's talk about diversity on campus. A few years ago, a few decades, welcome Kahla, how are you? A few years ago, diversity on campus used to be pretty much at 0 degree. Right? Everybody was at the same background, the same social, economic background. Everybody had similar experiences. And nowadays, the way we see diversity on campus is they want everything. They want people from different backgrounds. They want interesting, students, athletes, legacy, donors, low-income students, first generation, musicians, artists, and so on. They want to make the classroom a very enriching conversation, a room for people with different points of view. A debate where arguments can happen in an enriching way. Okay? Then let's talk about the types of application. Early decision, early action, restrictive, regular decision, and rolling applications. So, early decision. Early decision, we just passed early decision back in November 1st. Now there are a few schools pushing to November 4th to give just a few more days. And early decision, you have one shot, one card that you can apply. Okay, and that means that if you get accepted, you must commit and you must withdraw the other applications. So early decision can be really tricky. Basically what you're saying to the university when you apply early decision is, you are my first love, and I don't care about any other university. I'm willing to drop everything else if I get accepted here. okay? But there are many things to consider with early decision. You will not get to compare offers, right? So you don't know if you could get maybe another university that might offer you merit aid. You'll never know because you committed with that early decision, okay? Early action. Early action is great. I love early action. Early action is basically regular decision just pushed a little bit earlier. Okay, and you can apply to many early actions, and there's no binding. Then there is restrictive early action. Look at the nuances. Look at all the sabotage in the applications, you know, the little things that you need to know, right? So restrictive early action, it's not binding, but it is restrictive. Meaning, you cannot apply to any other early decision or any other early action. You can only do one restrictive early action. And look at, like, you see how each school has their own policies? Okay, then we have regular decision. Regular decision is great. You can apply to as many universities as you want, and you can get as many offers, and you can compare. I love regular decision. And usually regular decision, the timeline, the deadline used to be December 30th, and then they kind of like realized that it's not nice to make the kids, you know, stay during the holidays writing essays. So now they pushed regular decision to January 5th, January 10th, January 15th, depending on the university. And then you have rolling applications. Rolling applications is there's no deadline. You can apply any time of the year. Okay, so let's talk about the decisions. Very, very important, right? Accepted, celebration, there's nothing to explain. Rejected, well, we gotta move on, turn the page as soon as you can. You don't want to keep, crying over, just move on. Deferred. Deferred is when you apply early, it comes from the early decisions, okay? And basically it means, well, we're not ready to make a decision about your application yet. We're gonna push you into the regular decision pile, okay? So it can be a big question mark. You may be accepted, you may not be accepted. You just don't know. So that's deferred. And then waitlisted, also a big question mark. You just don't know what's going to happen, right? The waitlisting comes from the regular decision. So usually you get waitlisted like in May, April, and then you might get a call in July saying, listen, I actually have a spot here, and if you would like to come, we would love to have you. But you already made a deposit in another university. Guess what? A lot of people do. You know, they drop the deposit, they lose the money, they say, whatever, I deposited $500 or $1,000, but guess what? I have the chance to go to the university that I really wanted, so I'll take it, okay? And then you have alternative paths, which are, well, there are many different types of alternative. For example, we cannot offer you admissions to the School of Business, but if you're willing to come to the School of Communications, we would love to have you. That's an alternative. Or location, for example, we cannot admit you to the first year here in New York City, but if you're willing to go to Dubai for the first year, we would love to have you for the next 3 here in New York. Or, for example, a different program or a different starting point. For example, let's say, we cannot accept you this year, but if you're willing to transfer, sending a transfer application, then you have a guaranteed offer. Okay, so these are the alternative paths. And you never know, you might get something like that. Okay, then let's talk about building the college list. Building the college list is really one of the most important aspects of being a college advisor. Again, it goes back to there are 4,000, 5,000 universities. How are you going to select those colleges? Well, I like to say it's important to create a balance between dream universities, target, and safety. Dream universities usually are the selective ones, right? But hey, you might get a shot, we might try, so let's prepare an application, especially if you are preparing with a robust and competitive application. You know when you have a chance, or you don't. It doesn't mean you're gonna get accepted, but there is a very educated way to know where you can apply, okay? And that's my job, right? And then the target, you target your profile, your universities. Okay, you have these grades, these extracurricular activities. Let's make, some of the universities that you really have a great chance to get in. And then you also have some safety universities, which you never know what's going to happen with the application, so it's a good idea to have some safety on the list, right? So, all this conversation about college admissions, college life, college applications, we cannot have this conversation without talking about affordability, right? I mean, it is known today that colleges are really, really expensive. Like, we hear that some colleges are up to $100,000 per year. So even for very wealthy families, that is a big investment and requires big considerations, right? So what's included in the cost of attendance? Tuition and fees, right? Books and supplies, room and board, which is housing, I just say housing, transportation, and personal expenses. So the ticket price is one thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is going to pay the ticket price. And what is the solution for that? FAFSA. FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. It's a form provided by the government. It's a free form. You don't need help to apply. You enter your financial information on the FAFSA form. It used to be very complicated. Now it's not that complicated. They just made it, there was a whole debacle about, the FAFSA recently, but they are trying to simplify the form. And basically, the government sends the information to the universities, and that's how you can discover how much. They can see your financial situation, right? And then we get to this part where we talk about how much is the university going to give you? What type of financial aid do they operate on? Okay, so there are two types of financial aid, need blind and need aware. Need blind means that the university is blind to your financial situation, meaning they're going to make a decision on your application regardless of your financial situation. Okay, so they're not even going to talk to the financial aid department. Okay. And need aware is when, for example, they have two students with similar profiles, right? And they're going to pick one that can pay full tuition. Most of the universities are need aware. The only universities that are need blind are those that have a large endowment, those that have deep pockets, a lot of resources. And who are those? The Ivies and the quasi-Ivies. Okay, so being need blind is like, if you can get to a need blind university, it's a really great thing. Okay. Then let's talk about the types of financial aid. Grants are great. I love grants. Grants are money that is gifted to you. We don't need to pay back, right? So grants, there are grants from the federal grants, from state grants, and institutional grants, which are really the most important grants, because they can dig into their pockets and say, no, we want that student. And we want to have them, so we are going to dig into our own pocket. We're not going to count on federal or student or state grants. Okay, we want you, and we're going to make that happen. Okay, then there's work study. Work study, it's usually when students are offered, these all come in the financial aid award, okay, these are all part. It's never just one thing. Like there are many sections of the financial award, right? And work study is really one of them. It's very common. And they offer students an opportunity to work at the university. So you can work at the lab, you can work at the library, you can work as an assistant for a professor, you can work as a tour guide, which actually, by the way, working as a tour guide is a very competitive position in school, right? And usually when you talk about work, it's not 9 to 5. They know that you're there to study. So you're talking about maybe 4 or 6 hours per week, so it's quite doable, right? Then you have merit aid. Merit aid is really a tool that universities are using more and more to lure you into the university, right? So it can be based on academic performance, achievements, athletic or artistic talent. So say, for example, that you have a talent athletic, or that you are a sculptor or a photographer or a painter. You can use that to boost your application, and you might, it's never guaranteed, but you might receive merit aid based on your talents, right? They're always looking for people to participate in their different activities, and athletics, especially athletic, it's a big part of the university. All those sports, there's big money in sports and universities. Then there's also loans. We hate loans, obviously. We hate them. There's unsubsidized and subsidized. Unsubsidized meaning that the interest starts counting during college, which is even more horrible than subsidized, right? Which you can at least wait until you graduate to start paying interest. And then there is outside scholarships. You can always apply for local and national scholarships. Local scholarships, you will usually have better chances of getting some scholarships from your local institutions. And there's always companies like the big ones, the corporate McDonald's and Burger King and Pepsi Cola. They need to give scholarships, and every year they have a selection of students that receive scholarships. So Leticia, how do I know how much money college will cost? Well, thank you for asking, because that is a very important question, and I have 3 words for you. Net price calculator. This is probably the 3 most important words here that you need to just remember. Net price calculator. Okay, so how do you discover the net price calculator? Well, every university has the requirement by law to have on their website a net price calculator. Okay, so it's very simple. You go on Google, you put the name of the university. So let's say Boston University net price calculator. Boston College net price calculator. Georgetown University net price calculator. And it's going to take you to a website where you enter your tax returns, and this is the time when having an accountant, it's a really great thing. You want your accountant to work with you, and especially when it comes time for, college planning, yes, you need that accountant as a friend to help you out, and he's gonna help you figure out the expected family contribution, which is basically the amount of money that you're gonna have to pay based on your finances, on your family, okay? And there's usually a small margin of error of 10%, which is really not a lot. So you can really figure out how much college is gonna cost with the net price calculator. And believe me, I have students who I have built the list of college based on the net price calculator, not based on my dreams and my target. No. the net price calculator determines when and where we are going to apply. Okay, so it's really important. Then, for example, over here we have an example of a very generous university, Princeton, and they know that college affordability is a very big issue for their families. And these days, they are taking families that make up to $100,000 per family per income, and you're going to pay zero. I mean, that is amazing. All you have to do is get in, right? Which is why, again, working to craft an application that you can actually win the game is so important, you know? And the sooner you start, the better. It takes a long time to cook the application, right? So, who can apply for FAFSA? American students can apply for FAFSA. And green card holders. Oh, but Leticia, I was transferred here and my husband has an H-1B and that's our visa. Can I apply? You cannot apply with a visa. You need to have a green card or you need to be an American. Oh, but Leticia, I have a family in Brazil and my nephew he lives in São Paulo and they want to come study here in the US. Can they apply? Yes, they can. Filling out the CSS profile. The CSS profile is a form created by the College Board, which is the gorilla of our industry. They administer the Common App, they administer the SATs, they administer the AP exams, and they created the CSS profile where you give all your financial information. And so now international students, it used to be in the past, many universities were not willing to give financial aid to international students, and that is changing. More and more universities are realizing that they need to open up their financial aid to international students as well. And how do you win the admissions game? Well, we have been talking about this. You really need to take the time to prepare a stellar application. And on that note, I would love for Thomas and Maria to take over, introduce yourselves, and share your experiences about college applications.
Does this work?
Yeah.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining tonight. Happy to be here. My name is Thomas Schwartz, this is my mother. Just to give a little bit of background, so I graduated from Cornell in 2019. I went to the School of Industrial and Labor Relations. I guess just a little bit about, what I was thinking about when I wanted to apply. So I played lacrosse and I went to Cornell lacrosse camp in 4th grade. And it was my first time actually ever sleeping away from home. And I like to say that things really do come full circle. When I was applying, I knew I wanted Cornell. That was like the one thing. So I did ED. And when I was deciding, what my best shot is, in landing at Cornell, I always liked business. I always liked economics. I work in finance now. And that was always something of interest. And when I was looking, I knew that Dyson, which is the business school at Cornell, had a 2% acceptance rate. And I knew that, coming from a public school where there's 700 kids in my grade, at least 5 or 10 others would be applying to the business school at Cornell. So I sort of, my mother obviously helped me tailor my application around, what is my best shot to get into this school, because I had a non-negotiable of I want to go there. So what I ended up doing was applying to the School of Industrial and Labor Relations, and I really enjoyed it actually. And I have friends that also applied to the School of Industrial Labor Relations and even transferred. Once they actually got in, that was their way in. They transferred to the business school or whatever other school. But the story was sort of like I wanted to be the intermediary between American and Brazilian businesses, and I had done community service in Brazil, helping at Refeitório Gastromotivo, which is, they cook for 90 homeless people every single night using food that otherwise would have been wasted. So think of like, a banana that's a little bit brown that nobody bought at the supermarket, and they, cook it. So over the course of the year, I did translation work with them, and then I also went and, so my grandparents live in Rio. When we got to Rio, I spent 3 weeks actually hands-on cooking, which was a really nice story. So that's a little bit about me and my background and sort of like how I wanted to apply to Cornell, but I'll pass it over to Maria to share her experience.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maria. Wow, you gave a full class. I wish I knew everything when I was applying to college. So I double major in psychology and art history at Eugene Lang at the New School. And then after that, I did my master's in psychology with a substance abuse concentration at the New School for Social Research. After I graduated my master's, I knew I wanted to do a PhD directly. The problem is, I am quite young, and I was competing against people that had a lot of experience. And thanks to my mother, who is in a group chat with a lot of women in New York, she sent me Leticia's contact, and at the time, I was in the dark, because applying to a PhD is a completely different experience. Because, so a PhD in psychology, when you are a doctorate, actually, you have a PsyD, you have a PhD, and in psychology you have PhD in counseling psychology, PhD in clinical psychology, PhD in social psychology, forensic psychology. Well, PhD in clinical psychology, but it has a focus like more psychodynamic. The other one is cognitive behaviorism, health focus. And so not only when you're applying to a PhD, you need to, I learned a lot about myself when I was working with Leticia, because I was searching for my passion and which type of school I will be the best fit, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking, when you're applying to a PhD, they're looking at your research, your passion, and how you're going to contribute to that. So my research is masculinity, sexuality, and sex initiation in upper and lower social class Brazilian men. And when I was applying, they asked me, why are you researching that? So it was a whole, let's say, therapeutic experience.
Yes.
Where you were helping to find answers of why I'm doing that, what is my passion, and how I'm tailoring that to apply to a PhD in clinical psychology. So, out of those universities, when you're applying to a PhD, you need to match with a professor, with a specific lab, that you are going to be a good fit, right? So, when I was applying, Leticia and I, we were looking for professors in each university that we will be able to match my research and my experience with their lab. And that was, we tailored all the applications, but we were actually doing research. We needed to read their papers and to write about it. Yeah, right. And she helped me in many, many ways. Specifically, like when I was doing my interviews, we practiced, and I sent Leticia pictures like, okay, is my clothes okay? Am I presentable? Like, what should I say? How is going to be my posture? Right now, I am doing a PhD in clinical psychology, health focus at Pace University, which was one of my top choices. And I remember that one of my professors, who was supposed to write a recommendation letter, did not did not submit it in time. And I called Leticia crying, was like, everything's lost. I'm not gonna get into my dream university, not gonna do research, what I wanna do. And I remember I applied to Yeshiva. I sent an email, I'm so sorry, it's like my professor did not submit it. And they were like, no, it's done. And I bombarded face with emails, please accept it, and bombarded the professor to submit it. Finally, her assistant saw the email and sent it to me, and then she helped me to do my interview with the clothes, with everything. And then after I got in, she helped me to apply for a job at the university. I'm a graduate assistant there too. And so she also helped me with my resume. And I worked at the time in a substance abuse center with Latino men, lower social class Brazilian men, most of them immigrants, and that do not speak English. So I was giving therapy both in English and Spanish, and they had no idea what they were doing to apply to jobs, to do resumes. So she taught me how to do it, and then I taught them. So I think it's a full circle of how she helped me. So I can now pass the knowledge. And I was talking with someone today that they are applying to their postdoc. See you in 5 years again.
Yes, yes. So we're going to open soon to questions. I hope you have some questions, but I actually do have some questions for you guys. I'll start with Thomas. Thomas, can you tell a little bit about how working, I mean, I'm your mom. Let's face it, it's not easy to work with, mom and daughter. What was the impact of our work in the application process?
Yeah, so well said. Working with you is not easy in the best way, in the best way possible. I think your passion certainly carried out on me in strengthening my application and making sure everything was, ready to go. I think one particular area that I really had a lot of help on was sort of, how you tailored each boiling water to each different magazine. Absolutely helped me as well, in the sense that even though I did early decision to Cornell, I had all of the other ammunition ready to fire. And that's something that isn't necessarily easy for a junior in high school that's having to worry about, it's the most important year where you have to worry about all of your grades, and then in addition you have to worry about applying and everything, and it's crafting your story over the course of a few years. And I have to say, if I didn't have that help and I didn't have that passion of yours, I guess, carried out into me, I don't know if I would have ended up getting into my dream school. So, politely, thank you.
Thank you. And to Maria. Maria, how does applying for grad school, in your experience, is different than applying for undergrad?
Well, first of all, in my experience, as I said, I was quite young. When you're applying to a PhD, you need to understand that the cohort is very small. My cohort is basically, we are 5 people, 5 students. And when I was applying, if it were not for Leticia, I would not know that I needed to research for the professors. So I think that's completely different. When you're applying to a PhD, you already know what you want to do with your life. I want to become a clinician, and I want to work with Latinos. And so you need to really research the schools that are going to be a good fit for you, and not only that, they have names, right? And you need to, in your application, to show that you're a good fit to their research. So, as I said, I was completely in the dark.
Right. So the level of depth is it's a lot deeper. The depth are deeper in a PhD. When we're applying to undergraduate schools, we don't touch upon the articles that the professors published. And with masters and PhD, we actually do that. We go into Google Scholar and we read the article of each professor, and then that's how we match how her background can actually, fit for that professor. So yes, and it is quite therapeutic. I actually think that it's a very transformational experience. Regardless whether it's undergrad or grad school, I find, which is really what brought me into this profession. Something that most people see as very stressful. People are usually saying, "Oh, I'm so stressed. I'm applying for college."
That was me.
Right? Right. And I'm usually the opposite. I'm like that nerd that is like, "Oh my God, I love college applications. Let's talk. Let's have some fun about this." Because I really find it there is a joy that is to deal with hopes and dreams. I mean, people can actually change their lives when going to college, and that's what I see. I mean, yes, there's always a little bit of stress, but those are, part of any, we have to jump the hoops, right? Yeah. All right. Is there anything else that we would like to touch upon?
I think maybe we open it up to questions.
Sure. Any questions? No? Yes.
I'm going to try to put it the best way I can. So I have a daughter studying in the South, University of Alabama. She wants to transfer. She's doing nursing. She wants to transfer to a college near home. She's telling me that all the colleges around here, but I guess all the colleges in general, she needs to do a semester of electives in order for them to accept her when she's in that school. Is that the way it works? I mean, for me, it's kind of strange. I mean, if you have the GPA, if you have the credits, why do you have to do a semester outside of your specialty to get into your specialty? Is that a scheme? Is that the way it works?
It can happen, and it really depends on the protocol of each school and what she wants to apply to, and if she wants to transfer not only universities, but does she want to transfer like major? Is that the case?
Not a major.
Not a major. She wants to continue on doing nursing. Yeah, so what we really need to do for transfer applications, first of all, when you do a transfer application, there's something that's very delicate. It's like talking about your ex-husband, why you divorced, but not exactly being able to bash on him. You really have to, you can't bash on that school. You need to really praise the school, but say why you want to transfer. So that's, some of the essays are going to be focused on that. And then what we need to do is figure out each school that she wants to apply to as a transfer student and see what are their requirements. So some schools might require for her to do some electives outside and others don't. It really depends on the school. Again, all of these, like even though it's a educational field and industry, each school is its own business. So we can never say something like, "Oh, this is going to have to happen for every school." No.
Right.
We need to examine each application and see what is the requirement for each school.
Yeah, right.
And each essay, so that's the right approach.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I keep on telling her, you got to call the school and do research on that specific school because it does not apply to all.
It does not.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I want to say make it feel very, almost easy. Like it feels like you turned every stone, and they can't catch you. Like you have a solution for everything. So bravo. Amazing.
Thank you for that. But it's not easy at all.
Oh, I know it's not.
Yes.
It just shows how much work you've done.
Yes.
you just make it sound easy.
Oh, thank you for that.
That's my point. It's amazing.
I wonder if in other countries it's like this too. I mean, let's go to Canada, Brazil, Portugal, France. Probably it's not as complicated, right?
Well, European applications are very different than American universities. European applications are more focused on the grades as opposed to here. The approach here is very holistic. They give you many chances at many parts of the application for you to show a different side of yourself through essay. Then there's supplemental essay. Then there's additional information. Then there's activity list. With European universities, it's not quite like that. It's one essay, and it's more similar to Brazilian applications. You really apply directly to the major. It's not like here that, okay, I want to go to the University of Michigan, for example. I don't really care what school I'm going to go there. As long as I am in Mich, I'm okay. It doesn't happen there. In Europe, it's like, right, Michigan is quite like that. People are crazy for that university, and it's like, as long as you're there, right? With European universities, universities is more focused on what you want to study, and you need to explain why that major. So it's all about the major and the grades. There's a lot less essays, which I find that, it's very unique with the American approach. Right, to have as many opportunities to show many facets of your personality. They really care about you in a holistic way.
I have a question.
Yes.
I see they are preparing. When they prepare, they were in the last year preparing for that. I have my grandchildren. How to prepare them? Because you have to do social work before.
Yes.
You have to prepare before, because when you're gonna go to make your papers, what have you done? Do you play hockey? Do you play,
Do you want to take over?
And what do you do? That's what took me to come here
Right.
and to tell my grandchildren, you have to do that.
You have to tell your grandchildren to do that with Leticia.
With Leticia.
And start early.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you certainly have a great point. In an ideal world, everyone would be thinking about this before they even go to high school, right? Unfortunately, that's not the case. And I think certain high schools do better and worse jobs of educating their freshmen and sophomores on the process, because you're totally right? If you're a junior and the time has flown by, exactly. So I mean, I would say that to just start thinking about it as early as possible. I mean, maybe not like middle school or so, but just really thinking about it, early, and really maximizing the resources of whatever your community might offer, right? It can be even if it's something like very small that you think you can make into a much bigger story, and it's a very pointy application to a very specific school, to a specific program. I think obviously each community differs and what the high school offers, and, but I would just say that thinking about it as early as possible, even though that's not the easiest or best answer that you might be looking for, but it's the most candid one I can give.
I'm not a sports person at all. But I think that they also want to see if you did something practical. So I did a lot of community work. I went to Nepal to work with Nepali and Tibetan immigrants, refugees, and with my high school, and we helped them to paint a hospital and dig a pipe to bring the water from the mountains to the community. So I think it's something that you love and you think that's going to be impactful, because if you do something that it's meaningful for you, then you're going to be able to write it much better.
Just to build off that really quickly, the resources your community or high school or whatever may offer are great, in that sense, you can sort of be like your own entrepreneur. Like if you're really passionate about something and there's no program for it, like I believe that you can and will be able to find something or do something that exerts that passion and that you can really tell a story about.
And speaking of that, this is the only time when admission counselors, they want to see the initiative, but they don't really expect any results. So if you, let's say you build a business, you can make zero money because you're 16 or 17 and they don't expect you to make any money. But what they're looking for is the initiative of creating a business, you know. So that's something that it counts a lot, especially students who create their own businesses. It's a great point, you know.
It was so funny. My grandson had a business dinner with 3 more friends because they are making a new business. And he's on 7th grade, so.
Wow.
And I said,
great.
are you going for a business dinner? And for me, it's a surprise. It's so nice.
But that means that the spirit is there,
Yes.
right? That's great.
I thought it was perfect.
Yeah.
They began for the good part, right?
Yes.
It seems like they're thinking about it ahead of time,
Yeah.
which is good.
And they want to do something together because they get along so well. It's fun.
That's wonderful.
And Leticia, how can we leverage your service?
Well, feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to talk to your daughter. I'm happy to have a conversation, understand what are her needs, why she wants to transfer. I mean, I'm happy to really, like, you know, take this further and help. And that's my joy, you know, it's a mission of joy and love to help each student, you know, find their path, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Maybe
sure.
part here. I went through this process last year, so my kids just getting in college, but it's super important you have like somebody to counsel you, because I did everything last minute by myself, like crazy. They getting like I was being so lucky. I think the sports play a big role. And like last minute, because depends of the temperament of the kid too. Like my son know exactly what he wants, so super easy. I know what I want for him, so I push him. My daughter was all over the place. I asked Leticia help, but she never called Leticia back. It's this kind of thing. But she had like the GPA very low, because she never did homework in high school. In the 12th grade, she was really good, but she was a horseback riding since 6 years old. So she got offers. This is another problem. She got so many offers. She applied by herself, because she said, you try to control my life, I'm gonna do by myself.
That's what they say.
They start to get a little crazy, because it's like too much pressure too. So she said, I'm gonna do by myself. So she get the offer before the time, because the horseback rider said, oh, I'm done. She already getting, they have a big stable, so it's marvelous. She, no, I'm not gonna do that. And she applied for 25 colleges that I even don't remember. And then in the end, she started to be accepted. One after the other, she's changing mind. I don't like the West Coast. I'm tired of the people from the East Coast. I want to go to, then she want to go to Arizona. That was like a completely, so actually the process was, compared to the kind of child, the process was pretty simple, looked like it's complicated, but when you do everything and then your child just change mind in the last minute, every day, that is great.
Right.
So it's better you have, I think if she accepted that time, like, because we already are in the process, Leticia's happy, then she can like, because you know, the mothers, tell something they do completely opposite.
Right.
So if you have somebody else, I think helps a lot in this matter too.
Yeah, and I remember the many times we talked and how your daughter resisted to move forward. But what's wonderful about what you're saying is that it reminds me of that slide of the different buckets. Because not a lot of students do horseback riding. And some universities, they need to fill out their bucket for students who do horse riding, right? And it's all about what you bring to the university. So your daughter is actually contributing to the university where she is at in a great way, you know. So it's all about creating that, you know, finding where in the bucket are you? You know, are you an artist? Are you an athlete? What are you going to develop? You know, it's kind of like bringing, it's almost like being like a, you know, or a maestro in an orchestra and like, give me more of this, now give me more of that, you know, and trying to create an application that is a great reflection of you.
And I think one more last thing, I think the essay is very important because my daughter, like she have in the 12th grade, like a huge GPA, but like, and my son was super, he did honor roll, he was everything perfect. But his essay was like a kindergarten one compared to hers. So she was, many schools said, we like everything about you, but not your GPA. So you're gonna, so she have, now she's in Europe because the school, one of the schools like offer 1 year aboard the first year, so she, and everything was, for her was the good choice, because now she's having fun, she's riding in Europe, so every kid is different. And then the one she got, because like when you do sports, for example, horseback riding, she compete in, they call college preparatory invitation, so they, in the competition is just college to look for athletes. So they, as soon as she wins something, they offer the scholarships. So this is like, I think because some people don't think about the sports or this kind of, if you have something different, like special. So if these schools, for example, one school have a horse stable, so they compete, they have Division 1. So they have a lot of, they have the FAFSA, then they have the school give grants, they have like the association for horses, giving more than another association for ponies, giving more. So she was receiving one of the other offers much more than my son.
Yeah, because of the sports.
Because the sport, because her essay.
I remembered something. So, Leah, correct me if I'm wrong, but create meaningful relationships with your teachers and professors.
Yes.
Is that also applied
Yes.
to when you're applying to undergrad? Because they are going to be the ones that going to do your recommendation letters. I know that especially applying to master's and PhD, actually. So the professor that forgot to send, to submit my recommendation letter, she basically emailed me a sample of her recommendation letter she did for another student. Was like, okay, here is the recommendation letter, tailor it and write it for me, give me back. So I was like, Leah, and then Leah wrote my professor's recommendation letter and my boss recommendation letter. And so I was like, yeah, create meaningful relationships. Network.
Yeah, I mean, it is important that we actually, many times, even though the recommenders are submitting, because usually all of the recommendation letters need to come from the recommenders, it can never come from the student, but I usually go there and I kind of like, here's a template, you know, why don't you follow this and write about her, you know, because many times they don't know. They don't know how to do it, you know, so I like to offer the template even for recommenders. And they'll take it because it's less work for them. You know, for them to craft, it's like, oh, what? I need to write a recommender. I don't know what to write. Oh, here's a template. Perfect, you know. And we work on the resume, the rec letters, the essay. So yes, every step, there's a lot to work on, and that's why it does take a long time. Yeah. I think we're good, right?
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.